Everyone, welcome to the first season of the Hardtech Podcast. The Hardtech Podcast is about bringing together innovators, builders, investors, and thought leaders all in the world of hard tech. In my background in starting software companies that I've scaled and exited, there's so much content out there for folks building in the software space and not as much in the hardware space. And that's exactly why the Hardtech Podcast exists. This episode is with Eric Roberson, founder and CEO of HOOPTEQ, a super innovative shooting technology for young youth athletes looking to get better at shooting basketballs. And I think this episode is going to be really good to listen to because it's going to go beyond why just shooting a basketball is more than just about a metric. It's about a meaning. Super great to have you, man.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for driving all the way down. Because you're based at M Hub.
Yep, exactly. Yep, from Chicago. M Hub right there, near west side of the city. Me and my wife live not too far from there, so
that's awesome.
Had to make the trip.
Yep. And have you lived in Chicago your entire life?
Yeah, for the most part. I was born on the south side in a neighborhood called South Shore. Lived there for a while. All my family lives there. Grew up mostly in the south suburbs. Lived in LA for a little bit where I met my wife, got my master's degree. So LA was good to me. And then I had to come back home. So now I'm back in Chicago.
Nice. Any kids?
Not yet. No kids. Hopefully someday. But just HOOPTEQ. HOOPTEQ's my baby. So
yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about HOOPTEQ. Like, what are you building?
Yeah. So simply put, and I'd love to go into the story maybe a little bit later, but HOOPTEQ is the world's first rebounding and passing basketball machine that's so portable, so mobile, so lightweight that it actually folds down and compacts into a backpack.
Really?
I love that. It's one of those things that like you imagine this device only exists in professional settings, right? Only for the pros that they get to practice something like this, but you're trying to democratize that. So I don't even have to own a basketball court. I can bring this to my local park, my local basketball court and practice and have fun.
Exactly. Like me personally, I grew up walking, riding my bike to the local park. I mean, that was the main rim that I had. And so even if I could afford one of the big machines, what am I going to do with it? Right. Yeah. It's going to be TOOQ or Rust or, so absolutely building access so that anybody could have one of these machines.
And that's so fun. I think one of my favorite sides of innovation is the non-obvious one. Everyone's like, oh, innovation has to be a brand new thing and has to have never existed before. But there's the side of innovation that's not a better mousetrap. It is taking a thing that exists somewhere and dropping it into a new blue ocean, a new beachhead that somehow everyone else overlooked because either it's too expensive or too hard or too heavy, right? Like all these preconceived notions of what that product is and how that product behaves. And someone just had this clever idea like, oh, I'm going to pivot it this way. And now I can hit all these new markets.
Exactly. Yeah, right? That's spot on.
And like really changing like the form factor of what is a shooting machine. My background's in sports tech. And so obviously you have companies like Dr. Dish and I think it's Hoop Shot or something like that, where these are like huge $8,000, $10,000 shooting machines. And now you're saying that we can literally put these things in a backpack and a kid can just walk up to whether it's in his driveway or they can go to the park or something like that and literally have a shooting machine. Just like, is that basically
Exactly it. Where, before to be an elite basketball player, to have elite level training, you either needed to have money or you needed to be the tippity top 1% of skilled hoopers where the coaches want to invest in you for free or they want to give you free access to their gym because that's going to look good on them. Like I trained Derrick Rose, I trained Michael Jordan. Whereas now it's available that no matter what background you come from, no matter what access you have or the people that train you can train like a pro. You can have elite level basketball training access no matter who you are.
So where did you actually discover the idea or think of the idea? Was it because you wanted to shoot on a basketball goal and have it rebounded? You were tired of chasing them or what happened?
Yeah. Great question. And, Grant was talking a little bit about innovation. And for me, the innovation came out of necessity. I couldn't shoot a basketball.
You're my friends here. I also still cannot.
I couldn't shoot a basketball.
I like to claim I can. I cannot.
Yeah. And so I love basketball. I come from a basketball family. My dad's 65. He still hoops. We actually just won a basketball tournament together where he hit the game-winning shot in the quarterfinals of this tournament. So, I come from a long line of basketball players and hoopers. And earlier, I don't know what it was. I just couldn't shoot. And I remember I would practice and I would practice and I would practice over and over again, whether I'm riding my bike to the park, YMCA, I'm going to LA Fitness, whatever I can do to just get shots up. And I'm shooting hundreds of shots a day. My coach recommended I shoot up to 500 shots, right? So that was my goal. And I realized I'm just not improving. I'm not able to get that consistency of reps that I need. And I remember when I was young, I had to been maybe 10 years old. One of my teammates who was by far the best shooter on the team. He was more affluent, and he told me about this, to me at the time, magical device that would catch the rebound for you, whether you made it or you miss it. It would kick it down to a funnel, and then it would pass it back to you. So you could stand in one spot and get your shots up. And I realized, man, he was able to get 6 times more shots up than me in the same amount of time than I was. And that made me realize, like, my issue is not effort. It's access to one of these rebounding.
It's efficiency.
Exactly. It's efficiency. It's access. I just needed one of these machines. And so that's kind of what kicked off that journey for me. The problem with these machines, as we've kind of alluded to, is that they're extremely expensive. You know, the cheapest I've been able to find on the market is like roughly $3,000. Doesn't include battery, doesn't include shipping, can range all the way up to $20,000. And like I said, even if I could afford it, where am I going to keep it, right? They can weigh over 100 pounds. They're super big, super bulky. And so that's what really sent me on this journey to, create HOOPTEQ. And it started with me making a rebounding machine out of wood in my backyard.
You know, I think we talk about innovation and how that creates impact here at Glassport a lot. You know, one of the things I'm deeply passionate about is how true innovation not just changes the lives of people that make the cool innovations and successful companies, more importantly, the people that it serves. And that's something we really like to focus on. It's not just our customer, but our customer's customer. And when it comes to shooting, it's something as simple as a shooting machine. It matters. Why? Because you need to know how to shoot. And why is that so important? Well, if this kid learns how to shoot, he can get a college scholarship.
Right.
He can then be on that travel basketball team and get exposure and travel around the city and the country and see different things and be exposed to a different way of life that maybe otherwise he didn't have access to previously. That's why it matters to know how to shoot a basketball.
Exactly.
And that's why I think it's just so cool on the product you're making on the side of like the social entrepreneurship, because helping kids shoot is more than just a shooting machine.
Yeah.
Can you
absolutely.
talk a little bit more about that and like what your vision is there?
Yeah, that's spot on. And I mean, even to take it a step further beyond scholarship, which is huge in many different communities, the idea of sports being that outlet. I think of myself, like, basketball is such a mental health thing for me, where whenever I'm feeling a certain type of way, I need to clear my mind, I go and I get shots up. Or I think of all the friends that I've had growing up that have come from basketball. And so the fact that there's a device that allows people from all backgrounds to be on the same elite level and experience all the beautiful benefits that come with exercising, that come with community, of being on a team, that come with, scholarships, or maybe even going pro, whether it's in the NBA or overseas or something of that regard. I think there's plenty of opportunity to have an impact just with the device itself. And then taking a step back, I mean, my background is in the nonprofit world. Up until 4 months ago, I was full-time nonprofit, where I did educational programs, where I actually got right out of college, I started after-school programs. I started after-school programs on the west side of Chicago. Really initially started just bootstrapping it. I was a teacher, and I realized the need that my kids had. Funny enough, they were starting businesses, and I realized they needed mentors for their business. So my after-school program was pairing mentors with the kids' businesses that they were starting, which actually I never really thought about that, but it had a big impact on me to eventually go the entrepreneurship route. But anyway, after-school programs. So I started after-school programs, and I would start them, and I was able to start 2 of them in Chicago. And then that expanded. I partnered with a nonprofit, and we ended up expanding it throughout the country. And even I think there ended up being a similar program that used our curriculum in Mexico as well. And it was great, super fulfilling. And then this thing called funding ran out, and I realized, like, in order to be sustainable, you're just constantly fundraising. And I kind of kept that in my head. And then I had a friend of mine tell me about this concept of social entrepreneurship. And it's the idea that you can have a sustainable business model that sells a product or service, or, generates revenue just like a business, but then also has the double purpose of creating impact. And so that realization, and me, unfortunately facing funding issues, made me really interested in social entrepreneurship. I went and got my master's degree at the University of Southern California. I think they had one of the earliest social entrepreneurship degrees, and I went and got that. And then, truthfully, that's just in my DNA. And so one of the pillars of HOOPTEQ even now, I mean, we're in the pre-revenue phase. I haven't even launched my pre-sale campaign, and we're already in the community interacting with kids. In fact, just Tuesday, we were at an event with Chicago Public Schools called Reimagining STEM. And we said, hey, you know, we're still in the prototyping phase. And I like to think of myself like I'm a Dumbo. Like, I don't know anything about engineering, but I am a lo-fi master. Like, I know how to make a good lo-fi product or prototype rather, just because out of necessity, I don't know how to engineer otherwise. And so I was like, man, let me show these kids that, hey, you don't need to be an engineer. You don't need to have all the money in the world. But you can create something, you can invent just with the tools you have at home. And so we brought all my lo-fi prototypes to this CPS event and we're showing the kids. But this is a long way of answering your question of, you know, what does social entrepreneurship mean to me? I think it's, you know, obviously making money and having a sustainable business. But to me, I say, okay, to what end? So I can get rich? No, it's so that I can have an impact. I can inspire as many kids as I can, say, hey, you can do it too. Eventually, we're going to have a workforce development program that we're still ironing out the details with a few local nonprofits, but we'll likely do kind of like a pipeline from those who are formerly incarcerated to then coming and getting workforce development training with HOOPTEQ and then working full time, or also like continue to impact schools just like we're doing. But yeah, to me, it's just in my DNA. I think having an impact in business should go hand in hand, especially once you have a successful business. I think it's an obligation to kind of give back and have an impact.
Yeah, no, and it's one of those things that when you're early on, like, how am I ever going to find time to do that? How am I ever going to find time to give back? And I used to very firmly believe that. I'm like, I'm so busy trying to get this business off the ground. Like, how do I ever give back? And as time's gone over and, you know, things have evolved, I find myself getting signed up and like wanting to sign up for all of this, you know, volunteering to mentor EV Grand Prix or run tech inspections for that program at Purdue, or have a bunch of high schoolers in their summer programs come through Glassboard this summer and take some time out of our day as Glassboard to tour them through, show them our prototyping methods and like show them what STEM can be. Yeah. You know, it's not all like manila folders and cubicles and drawings. Like, no, we get to get our hands dirty and get prototypes built. And I love your lo-fi prototyping. I want to swap notes. So what is your favorite lo-fi? One of ours is CAD. Cardboard aided design is one of our favorite lo-fi prototypes.
I love that. Yeah. To your point of, you know, finding time, I just want to comment on that real quick. I like personally, I've always found that like, if I pursue those things, I pursue having impact, it tends to come back around for me. And that's actually one thing I appreciate about both of you. It's clear how genuine you two are of helping other people. Whether or not, you know, they ultimately come and work with your company, or you're just so involved in making sure that people succeed. And I'm sure both of you have plenty of examples where it comes back full circle to you. But like for me, I'll give you a perfect example. Even this Tuesday, this event where we went just to, out of the goodness of our hearts, we wanted to really give back to the community. I mean, guess who was there? The Chicago Sky were there. The Junior WNBA were there. And so, you know, my director of partnerships, Joseph Roberson, AKA my pops, you know, he got phone numbers and he has meetings set up, and we're hoping to leverage that into a big long-term partnership with them. But I mean, that just comes from the idea of reciprocation or reaping what you sow or karma, whatever you're.
And it boils down to community.
Yeah.
What you just described is how community actually is supposed to work. Whether this is a religious community, a social, like where you live community, a school community, I don't care what the driver is for what you're naming this community, but as you start to build community in your life, in your career, in your business, it all comes around, right?
Yeah.
When we had bad storms run through Indy today, and like, I'm sure someone is helping someone else cut down a tree in their yard who doesn't have a chainsaw. And that's just that Hoosier hospitality, as we call it here in Indiana, but that comes back around tenfold every time you put it out.
Yeah.
It's not immediate, right? It's one of those things that it's a garden. You have to plant the seeds like you and I were talking about and sow it and water the garden, but eventually it will all bear fruit because, it takes a village, right? Yeah. I didn't get to be the technical engineer I was alone. I had some great mentors along the way. And then I didn't get to become the, executive and CEO that I am today without some amazing mentors that kept me from doing some really silly things.
Right.
That community is what makes everyone better, because the people that taught me didn't learn it on their own. Everyone got taught how to do it right somewhere. Humanity has been standing on the shoulders of giants from, the first time we discovered fire to now.
Yeah, totally.
And the great things we can all do is only getting better and faster for how much more connected we all are. Right. This is from the basketball courts to social media to, this podcast right here and us sharing this journey. That access to hearing stories of others in community is going to make everyone better, from kids in school all the way up through aspiring entrepreneurs all the way up to hopeful venture capitalists listening to this podcast that, might look and want to invest in you and close that loop in community.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I completely agree. I think, I recently joined Glassboard, as you know.
Still haven't left yet. We're all impressed.
I think this is officially week number 5.
Yeah.
Hey.
But really originally got to know Glassboard, more importantly, Grant,
Yeah.
through my first startup all on Team Sports. The IP got acquired early last year.
Congratulations, by the way.
It happened. We made it.
Let's go.
But nonetheless, this was way back in 2020. I started the startup whenever I was in college, and I'm in this program called G-Beta, which is a young startup accelerator program that's for like pre-product, pre-everything, pre-revenue. Just a bunch of people just being nice. And I think somehow getting sponsors to pay for this thing that they were doing. But it's basically a feeder into their main accelerator, which is, an investment accelerator. And I'll just never forget, Grant just like jumps on and it's like just super helpful. He's a mentor in the program.
Yeah.
Super duper helpful. I remember feeling so encouraged. There was nothing that he could have got out of it because he was building actual things with atoms and I was using bits.
Yeah.
But he really was like genuinely helpful. And so then fast forward several years later, right? So this is like you reap what you sow, but doesn't happen as quickly as you may think sometimes, right?
Absolutely.
So in this case, it was several years later and I was the chief revenue officer for that company called Geyser's Team that I mentioned to you earlier. And I said, hey, we're talking about building a new product. I said, we have to go talk to Grant.
Yeah.
Right. And it's because like that first engagement or however many engagements we end up having in between there was just helping. And I think like Grant just mentioned, it comes back to just genuinely wanting to help people.
Yep.
And then that's why you work with people. It's that relationship.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting to think about how that is going to play with HOOPTEQ and that like how you can play both the product and have like the nonprofit feel or that social entrepreneurship feel. I think what you're going to see is a lot of that come back to bear harvest, right, over time, which I think is super unique. And I don't know if you can map that out from a KPI and ROI perspective, but you could certainly zoom out from a number of years from now and see the impact that actually creates.
Exactly. Yeah, that's spot on. And I think especially when it's done genuinely, and people can tell when it's done genuinely or with ill intent or selfish intent, it could be a really special thing. I mean, even worst case scenario, you end up meeting the most amazing people and having great community, like you said, Grant. So that's spot on. But I love the question you asked about lo-fi.
Yeah.
I like that CAD. What'd you say?
Cardboard aided design. Yeah. And so, everyone thinks 3D CAD, computer aided design. No, it's cardboard aided design. You got the X-Acto knife out and scissors and tape, and you're just trying to, does this form fit on the table right? Is this how big this is supposed to be?
Yeah.
Would this fit in your pocket? Yeah. And it's so fast. You can just rip through crazy ideas, right? And you don't have to be talented, right? Unlike, because I can't draw. I may be an engineer, but I can't sketch an idea to save my life. Like my hands don't do what my mind wants.
Yeah.
But cardboard, I can always just keep trimming some off till it's about right and wrap some duct tape around it. I'm like, just feel it. Don't, we know it's ugly.
Yeah.
Just feel it. And then you can get that idea across. And for me, that just became such a great early form of communication.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Like I think some of my favorite like lo-fi things that I've ever done, definitely, the sketches and the cardboard, those are great. Like I think those are classics. Like you can't beat those, truthfully.
Yeah. So what's your wood shop go to? Are you like dowel pins and stuff, or
I'm a PVC guy. I love me some PVC pipe, man. I know I know the most niche websites too in order to find like the perfect joints for them too, like all couplers. The right angles and couplers and the ones that swivel and move. And so if you're watching this at home and you need some very specific PVC pipe connections, email Eric at hooptech.com. But yeah, definitely I love PVC, like making things like another one that I actually was talking to the youth at the STEM event on Tuesday about a lot, because I feel like it's more accessible for them, is I love combining in their instance, like combining toys. And so one example I gave them is I got a Nerf hoop. I got like the same kind of like motor setup that think of like a Hot Wheels, the Hot Wheels are like
they
two
spin
spinning wheels and then it projects the car. And so I had basically a device similar to that. And I basically connected those to launch the ball. And then I took a, the pop-up soccer nets.
Oh yeah.
That you can twist them and they fold down.
It's just like the tent you can never get back together.
Yeah, exactly. And so, right. Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
It's easy. You got to watch like a whole YouTube video, just figure out how to get back in the bag. But so I just combined 3 toys and I told the kids like, hey, this is a way to test the concept. This is called a proof of concept prototype, showing that I can launch a ball, showing that this more nimble kind of structure for the net can catch and knock a net into a funnel that can then reciprocate and send the ball back. And I love stuff like that. I think I had a third one that I like. It's escaping me, but I think those are kind of like the main two that I tend to go towards.
Sure.
And what I'm jealous about is a lot of the kids today are getting access to CAD, like computer aided design in school. Like my high school did not have CAD. Mm-hmm. And I went to I think a great high school, and like they just didn't have CAD. Wasn't the thing they taught. And nowadays I'm meeting these, late elementary, early middle schoolers like, oh no, I was in Tinkercad in my class the other time. Like, you what?
Yeah.
And like, no, I can 3D draw a thing and make a little like visual image of it on the computer screen. And oh man, like the accessibility of that being free to access for, personal use, and then how easy it's gotten, like the low barrier to entry to make that occur, then coupled with how cheap 3D printing's got. I mean, I was bored over COVID and bought a 3D printer for my house. It was cheaper than an inkjet printer. It was $99 shipped to my house.
I need to get one myself now.
And I was like, again, it was a pain to use. I had to level it all the time. Yeah. It wasn't easy from like wasn't user friendly, but it was cheap.
Yeah.
And it made whatever I wanted. Made 3D prints. So I was like, man, in 20 years from now, how easy it's going to be to truly get your ideas out in 3 dimensions.
Exactly. Yeah. I used to be really kind of like embarrassed too of like lo-fi prototypes. Because I just felt like I was it's imposter syndrome, where I never want to show people like what I was working on, or when I was testing different concepts, I would just keep it really close to the chest until I got to MHub, and then learned that most engineers who are classically trained and have master's, doctor, whatever in engineering, they start with lo-fi prototypes. I was like, oh, okay, I'm an engineer.
Yeah, you learn by doing.
I'm an engineer. Yeah.
What we call it driving by braille.
Yeah.
Driving by braille.
And so I may be at the beginner stage, but I'm getting there.
No, that's awesome. And it's so valuable to get that feedback, right? Because DeAndre, when you and I are always talking about like startups, we're like, well, who have you shown your idea to? Like, oh, no one, I can't tell anyone, it's a secret.
Right.
Like you're under NDA, so I can tell you. I'm like, no, you need to go tell everyone what you're doing.
That's right.
No one's going to copy it. Yeah. Everyone, you need to shout from the rooftop that they want this thing.
Yeah. At the point where most people are willing to copy your product, you're already so deep in the market. You're making so much revenue that the company that's more than likely thinking about copying you will just probably buy you instead to avoid the R&D, right?
Yeah.
Eric, we've learned about your background. You're obviously an amazing guy.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, from a character perspective, like seriously, like focusing on like the social impact of your startup before like it's even fully like born into the world. Like having that core bedrock is like amazing, and I think a lot of people can really resonate with that, both as a customer and as an investor, which I think is why you've been successful in raising capital so far. Let's talk a little bit about the actual product development, get a little bit deeper into like the business and like the different things that you're actually working on in terms of progressing down your path. And so from the actual product development perspective, where are you? What have you done, kind of experienced, and like what does the next 6 to 10 months or 6 to 12 months like look like for you to actually bringing the HOOPTEQ product, the backpack shooting gun,
right,
to the world?
Yeah. So I told you my story, how I faced that problem, right? Where they were too big, they're too bulky for me. And so the first thing I did, as any entrepreneur would, is I wanted to validate and see, do other people have this issue, right? And so as we all know, customer discovery was huge for me and is still huge as I, iterate on the product and getting feedback. And, truthfully, customer discovery is huge for me when I decided to go full-time as well. Making that leap from, working in the nonprofit space and truthfully loving the line of work that I did and feeling really fulfilled from it and being very happy with a steady paycheck. And then, leaping into essentially the unknown was really difficult, but the customer discovery I did said, oh no, not only is it a good idea for me to go on this full time, I have to. I talked to 40 hoopers and did more formal, customer discovery interviews where I'm taking notes and things like that. And without even telling them beyond like, oh, I'm a basketball startup, they all described HOOPTEQ.
This problem.
They all described this
They're
problem.
like, hey, I see what the tennis ball launcher's done for tennis, that I can, you can go buy that and bring one, there's one that like fit in a basket. You can carry to the park to launch balls. Now you still have to put the balls back in the launcher.
Right.
But that's super interesting that you were able to get that. So I have a question on discovery is how did you know to do that? Is that something you learned in your master's program? And I'm just curious because like most startups actually miss that the first time around, and they just get excited until they start to raise money, and then their investors tell them they need discovery. And where in this process did you learn to do that?
Yeah, I think I was. It helped going to business school for sure. So if you are in a position and you're able to go to business school and you want to be an entrepreneur, definitely do it if you can. You obviously don't need to, but definitely helps. That was the first place I learned about customer discovery. And then MHub, another shout out to MHub. They're getting all kinds of organic support today. I actually joined their Empower Black Founders cohort last year, and I recently graduated. It's about a 6-month. It's essentially a pre-accelerator program. I'm not sure if they would describe it that way, but more or less that's what it is.
It's like a little bit like I-Corps and NSF. That is like it makes you go do customer discovery.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm actually in I-Corps for another business I'm consulting on, and that's a perfect parallel.
That's awesome. It's such a small world.
Yeah.
And I-Corps is such a great program because most of the people that go into NSF, for those of you listening at home, National Science Foundation, they have Small Business Innovation Research Grants, SIBRs as they're nicknamed. And one of the things you can do before you do a SIBR is an I-Corps. And I don't know what that one acronym stands for, but what it is really it pays the team to go and just learn about their customers.
Yep.
And you have to write it down and you have to report it to get the funding back.
Yeah.
And most people that apply to NSF grants are academic in some nature, whether they're in grad school or they're a professor. And if they're going to try and chase their idea, the first thing they usually don't have any experience with at all is the actual market. They've got the technology or the chemistry or the software like figured out, but they don't know how to do the customer. So it's so cool to see that you're doing I-Corps with another thing you're involved in, and you went through that program at MHub.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, for both of those, as you explained, like for example, Empower through MHub, they have a grant, but they don't release the grant until you've hit, the threshold for customer discovery interviews, which is great. And so, I interviewed, officially interviewed about 40 hoopers between either myself having those conversations or, different people on my team. And then, I use like an AI recorder to kind of transcribe them, and obviously read through the transcriptions or listen back, and then kind of did some like summarization there. And then also, use that to then go and do a quantitative survey as well to kind of ask and dig in and get kind of a bigger sample size with similar questions. So,
how much would you pay? How much weight could this be for you? And trying to build this rough idea of what you're trying to build.
Yeah, and even trying to like figure out like the right customer too, because I'm still considering it. Me and DeAndre were talking about go-to-market strategy earlier, and hope to get into that a little bit today. But is there a market for schools, for example, or for trainers, or is this like a direct-to-consumer product only, where I'm just selling to like kids and the parents of kids, and customer discovery kind of helped me.
And where do you start? Because it might be all the above eventually.
Exactly.
But, is it easier beachhead to do schools first? Because there's less of them. So, you have this target market, they have a little bit more money than the individual consumer because they can share it with all the students. Or is it actually easier to go to the consumer, hope that some of them have disposable income, where this is more of, a thing that they get just because they want one, not because they need one.
Yeah.
And that builds enough demand and groundswell to show everyone that needs one that they exist.
Yeah, exactly. So we're still kind of closing in on the answer. I'm still trying to figure that out, but definitely customer discovery will be a big asset of that.
So you bring up a good point. Actually, this is a question worth having answered with Grant, because we were talking through it a little bit in terms of go-to-market.
Yeah.
So you walked me through like your go-to-market strategy for HOOPTEQ, right? Your ICP, if you had to pick one, it's like young basketball players.
Ideal customer profile.
Yeah, ICP is ideal customer profile. Who you're selling to.
I totally knew that.
And their archetypes, who they are. Okay. The cost per unit. So you're targeting like a 50% landing cost.
Yeah.
Right? 50% margin, which is great from a Hardtech perspective. Go to market. So you had partnerships and influencers. So you just landed a pretty large, 3 million follower?
Yeah. We're still signing the paperwork, so I don't want to say yet, but he's got about 3 million followers across his different platforms. And what I love the most is that he's specifically a basketball trainer influencer. So very niche in that market. But
I think from a go-to-market perspective, influence-led marketing, we did it with All In. I think for a consumer product, like B2C product like yours, that has that novel, like this is the first shooting machine in a backpack. Right. The backpack looks really cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely going to work. Of course, you have your pay-per-click marketing. You can definitely get a positive ROI on pay-per-click because that's like your background too.
Yeah, exactly. Digital marketing.
You're eating your Wheaties on email drip campaigns, press events. So we talked about press events. We landed on this idea of doing like backpack drives. 'Cause
Yeah.
at the end of the day, HOOPTEQ is a backpack.
Right.
Right. And so what was like your thoughts there?
Yeah. And I love brainstorming with you because you kind of helped me refine that idea. So I'm definitely going to give you props and support and help and gratitude for your help on that. But yeah, my thought is, hey, like this product, it is going to make elite basketball training accessible for everyone. And how cool would it be from I'm just going to start shouting out celebrities. Maybe y'all could tag them and we can make it happen right here now. But like a Derrick Rose or a Angel Reese said, hey, I want to make basketball training accessible for everybody. I'm going to buy X amount of these and I'm going to, do this backpack drive program, give it to every women's basketball team in the Chicago public school system. I've already crunched the numbers, about a little over 100 teams. And so because mine is at affordable price points, totally doable, but setting it up in a way that, again, it's kind of like a mutually beneficial win-win situation all around where, the endorser is obviously able to have an impact and lift their brand. The schools that are receiving these get elite basketball training. HOOPTEQ is able to, generate some revenue, get some traction, right? Show that, this product is good and people want it. And so, yeah, that was like one of the ideas that we had talked about and I think could work. And yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
And whenever we were talking about that grant, we were kind of throwing around the concept of, well, there's already backpack drives that exist.
Yeah.
And so somehow integrating that together.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of just making about HOOPTEQ, making like more of a HOOPTEQ backpack drive.
Right.
Where it's both a HOOPTEQ backpack and backpacks.
Yeah. Right.
So either you can donate a backpack or a HOOPTEQ.
Or the flip side is, if you guys could get a backer for HOOPTEQ that's a charitable backer,
mm-hmm.
and you guys start a campaign that, hey, if we get enough backpacks donated, this other backer will donate X amount of HOOPTEQs to that school.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and then you can pull that community in.
So it's both educational and the athletics.
Yep.
Right.
And it's one of those things that you could pull it in that like, hey, everyone needs backpacks of various kinds to be
mm-hmm.
successful in their life, right? Whether it's to carry your books or this one to get access to this training and this great feature.
Yeah.
And, make that a blended mission.
Yeah.
Because if you have a charitable donor that's on the basketball side, able to donate the HOOPTEQs, but they're not going to do it unless the community comes together to donate for the backpacks.
Yeah.
And I think this is where the social, social entrepreneurship and the nonprofit and like the community building we talked about at the beginning of the episode circles all the way back around. We're literally talking about a marketing plan to get off the ground, a go-to market plan.
Right.
And we're like, all right, I think community can help here and do these things. And yes, it is, as we all say, it feels good. It's ethically good. It's just, it feels warm and fuzzy, but it's tactical.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Like the world works on community, whether that's the venture capital community. I mean, when you go to fundraise, you'll learn that 80% of your investors know each other by first
mm-hmm.
name. Like, if you have a closing in a room together, like old school days, everyone will shake hands and they know each other better than they know you.
Yeah.
And it's a community.
Yeah.
And this is just such a continuous narrative in our lives.
Absolutely.
More so in entrepreneurship than anything.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think the skeptic might say, well, oh, you're just doing that as a PR stunt or a marketing ploy. And I think that it definitely can be that. But if you take a step back and you look at kind of the fruits of that organization, then you can kind of tell what their intentions are. And I think making sure that there's always a balance of, no, we're actually in the community. Like, no, we know those kids.
Yeah.
We taught them earlier about entrepreneurship. We just had
lo-fi prototyping.
Yeah. We just had a workshop on, how to lo-fi prototype. And, I know them, so this is genuine. And I think that's when you get that reciprocation as opposed to kind of that one way, higher than thou type of giving.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other side of it is, even if it is pure capitalism,
mm-hmm.
you're still doing good for the kids.
Right. Yeah.
Like everyone is actually still
As
winning.
long as the kids win, you win.
Yeah. Right.
And I think that's my favorite part is I get this theory that like short-term selflessness is
mm-hmm.
actually long-term selfishness.
Mm.
Right. So being selfless in the moment usually means you'll get the most benefit at the end. Right. You build up enough goodwill, the community will take care of you when your chips are down. And it's this counterintuitive thing that everyone's like, well, why would I ever be selfless now? Like I should do it for me. I'm like, actually, the best way to set yourself up for success is to be selfless now, because the community will help you later when you really need it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was one of you I was talking to earlier at the Hub Hardtech Summit. You said, if you want, I'm going to butcher it, but like if you want a donor Or if you
want if you're looking for funding, ask for advice. If you're looking for advice, ask for money.
Yeah,
when you're fundraising. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Not an original thought. I actually don't know who to quote on that.
That's
one.
what they say about quotes. As long as you forget who you stole it from,
it's yours now.
You can claim
yours.
it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That is a Grant Chapman quote.
Perfect. Registered trademark.
Yeah. Can I add, is now a good time to ask about kind of the conversation we were having around almost like timing and how these different aspects come together from a, I guess, engineering perspective?
Oh, and like order of operations.
Yeah. So maybe we could do like a case study. We could brainstorm and hash it out right here. Mm-hmm. So me and Grant were talking. So I'm in a position where I am, as far as like developing the product goes, I'm very, very early on. Mm-hmm. I have essentially my proof of concept prototypes that I've, chat GPT'd and lo-fi'd and
iterated on and polished.
Exactly. Yep. So you take that. Eventually I need to go to market, right? So that's kind of the second leg. And then the third leg of this all is fundraising, right? I need to go out and get the seed money to, get the real engineering or
inventory or tooling or marketing.
Yep. Yeah. And I loved the idea that we were brainstorming earlier about kind of bringing in the pre-sale campaign really, really early in and almost giving like a behind the scenes look of where I'm at, saying, hey, like I only have a PVC pipe version with the motor that I got on Amazon.
But do you think this will be cool if this dream that we drew up over here comes reality?
Yeah, but I partnered with Glassboard and they gave me some super cool industrial design photos for example.
Some renders and some concept drawings.
Yeah.
And I think
I was going to ask, I'm curious from you guys, but like, how do you see those three legs, I guess,
of the stool
as far as like timing goes from like a first time founder like myself? You give me some like advice on that.
Yeah. I think the biggest one with the pre-sale campaigns and hardware that's really scary is don't sell it. When you're in a pre-sale campaign, don't sell it right away because it's going to take you longer than you think to get to market, and consumers are wildly unforgiving with delays. We've had clients that had to deal with some of that, fault. Now, ironically, their pre-sale campaign is the reason they were able to close their round, but it was really tough for them. I've seen other startups absolutely get crushed in their public will between a really good idea, pre-sale, a manufacturing switch, and delay. No one ever promoted the device again. Yeah. Just because they didn't ship on time or they weren't perceived to be authentic, even though like the founders are the first time founders and they lost their credibility. But I think what I've seen work really, really well are those pre-sale campaigns that get you to sign up or maybe put a deposit down, but not a full amount, right? Hey, no one's gonna be upset if you took 10 or 20 bucks off of them and it got delayed by 2 years. Yeah. But if you're taking, I don't know what your MSRP goal is, but $100 or $400, somewhere in this, three-figure number of money, I might be pretty upset if I put that money down and it's like 24 months late or 18 months late.
Yeah. Let's keep this practical. So my MSRP goal is 600.
Yeah.
Walk me, what would you?
Yeah. Go get a deposit, whether that's like 20 bucks or 50 bucks, like just enough that it's not like a 99 cent. Of course, I'm going to back this guy, but here's money out of my pocket that I'm never going to see again unless you guys make it.
Yeah.
If you can capture that on a render and a dream, you're going to prove that people want this thing because they know how much you're in your pre-sale. You're saying, hey, MSRP is $599 or $499, whatever this is. Do you still want to put a deposit down? And you will get the very first ones.
Yeah.
And along the way, you're getting access to the behind the scenes, of this. You're getting investor updates, just like my investors, but you're my micro, supporters.
Yeah.
That's going to get you your traction because what you want to show there, it's not how much money you made. It's actually not about how much money you took off the clients. It's about how much money you spent to access those clients.
Yeah.
Right. Like, hey, my cost per click to get my $20 deposit is already profitable.
Exactly.
Right. Like,
my conversion rate
is good.
On par.
My marketing's hitting the right ICPs. Here is their profiles of the people that are backing me. The age, demographic, where they live geographically. Are they a school or are they in person? You're starting to build your ICP model up and pressure testing that. And showing that you do know how to go to market.
Yeah.
Every investor is so scared of a technical founder, which again, you're luckily not. You're in this social entrepreneurship founder, so they're going to bet on you for go to market. And they're probably going to wonder if you're going to pull it off from building hardware.
Right.
All of the flip side is all of my technical co-founders I work with or founders, the investor's like, yeah, I know you can build it. Can you sell the thing?
Right.
Like, who is going to buy this from you? Right. How do you know how to access them? So if you can prove that you have access to the market in a way that's repeatable, oh man, now you've just de-risked the whole thing without needing to wait until you're done to go see if the market's there.
Yeah.
Or the other way around, tell the market it's here at the risk of blowing up all your social goodwill when you're 18 or 24 months later when you actually launch at scale.
Yeah, I would say, Eric, that is a probably more mature version of what we were talking about earlier. And the reason I say that is because I come from more like the software background.
Mm-hmm.
So I had an idea.
But you can fake it till you make it.
Yeah. Well, the concept that
he made it.
Yeah. The concept that I threw to Eric was this. So the biggest innovation when it came to, I told you this story as well, to Uber, for example, wasn't that you could ride in someone else's car as opposed to a taxi. It was actually the Uber map on your phone.
Oh, yeah, it's that you could see them coming.
You could see them coming. So people are much more willing to wait if they know how long their wait's going to be. But they're much more scared and fearful of the unknown. So as long as they know, I'm only going to wait 30 minutes as opposed to 15 minutes if I know you'll be here in 30 and I don't know you're going to be here in 15. So the same kind of concept applies to, in this case, a waiting list.
Yeah.
Right? And so like as you launch a product, if you could somehow turn your wait list into some sort of product like we mentioned before, where sure, maybe it's not the full $600 MSRP, but you say, hey, look, put down $100. It's $99.99. You're going to have the first units of this product. And then you have them opt into your personal Instagram account of HOOPTEQ or an email or yes to both.
Yeah.
And you keep them updated on a week over week, just super intimately updated.
Yeah.
And I think what that creates is the Uber map for the wait list to keep people engaged and maybe even become bigger advocates since you're being so transparent.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that too. Cause I mean, I have investors now, I'm already keeping them in the loop. And so just adapting that content, making it maybe a little more engaging, maybe polished, maybe not. Maybe it's simply me on my ride back to Chicago.
Real
selfie.
and accessible.
Yeah.
It's just super real.
Exactly. Yeah. Keeping them engaged that way. I love that a lot.
Yeah, because blending that back to your main question of how do these three legs fit together, right? So I think you need to hit this the proof that you have access to a market, because every investor needs to know that. I think that you also need to then prove the technical side of what you're doing, which is, again, you're already working on minimum viable prototypes, but building the plan and not even doing the engineering yet. The really important part is to make a plan of this is where I'm at and this is where I'm going. Again, whether you work with someone like Glassboard to make that plan, because we do this for all kinds of markets, or you hire an internal team that has experience in a launching product, having them build a plan that, because they've been doing this for a while and have some experience, is going to come with more credibility than had you had a technical co-founder that was really going to engineer it for you and might totally be able to do so. But now you guys have to sell to the investors that I've never done it by myself.
Yeah.
But I think I can do it for this.
Yeah.
It's totally different than when you're trying to say, hey, here's my vendor, or I hire these two engineers from XYZ company that maybe they built a tennis ball launcher.
Yeah.
They worked at that company that did that. They know it takes 18 months to go from A to B and where we're at in space. That investor confidence in now your technical timeline is just the same investor confidence that you got by accessing that market. And those two things, if you get those two legs of the stool, guess what? The third one's already there. If you have technical confidence and you have market confidence, now the investors are going to be like, okay, cool. Let's just talk terms.
That's a layup. Right.
Let's talk terms. Like now it's just down to brass tacks of venture capital. How big's your market? How much money are you raising? How big do you want to go? And it's way easier if you come with these two proof points to them than waiting for them to ask, well, how do you know how much money you need or how long it's going to take? Or how do you know you can sell this? This is this amount of, like, we call it discovery at Glassboard, that we'll go through and build this roadmap, this timeline, like who's involved, because Glassboard can't do everything. As much as I wish we were a manufacturer and all things of software developers, we're really good at developing hard tech and prototyping, but that's where our core competencies kind of end. But we'll help set up that supply chain. But I'll need to identify and discovery who's going to make this. Where are we making this? Do we need a 3PL to warehouse this, or are you going to build an office somewhere and warehouse and ship, direct? And building that roadmap plan, helps us build a product that you want, but it helps investors know who's doing what, when, where, and how. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I love that too. And it almost makes it feel like it's a pre-sale campaign in a way, where I'm not, selling it for the full MSRP price. And that even allows me to say, like, I'm just testing the water. I haven't even started yet, even though I'm getting these customers. And then when I do my pre-sale campain, it's going to explode.
And they'll all convert.
Yeah.
They already have 20 or $100 in. They're like, I want to be first in line. Like, hey, the very first of the first in line, first to fill, this bucket. And you can kind of, gamify that. And down, I know there's a whole bunch of psychology behind, like, how do you gamify people to get them to incentivize the right way?
Oh, sure. We can have a lot of fun with that. Yeah. The thing that I would say is, like, yes, it's not much of a pre-sale campaign. It's a validation campaign.
I like that.
You are validating both your engineering pillar.
Yeah.
You're validating your
marketing
go-to-market pillar. which then fuels your funding pillar. And that's whenever we were meeting together earlier saying like great founders who build truly great companies that impact both yourself and the lives of people that use them are people that do those three things in excellence very well.
Yeah.
Right. And it truly is a mixture between the engineering pillar for the Hardtech startup, the go-to-market pillar, which and the initial step for you is the validation, which is possible with some like industrial design like concepts.
Yeah.
Right? And then like initially like doing a pay-per-click campaign and converting, like you've done it, I can help you do it. Like we can get this thing like bought for $99.99. And truly like, it would be so great to see the validation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how much more confidence do you go to investors with saying, we launched this initial validation campaign to validate our go-to-market, not the fact that, because we already know our product's a moonshot. Don't worry about that part. Just to validate our channels.
Yeah. And not only validation, but the confidence it gives me to say, you know, I'm going to this investor, but I've got some cards here. You know, I have some negotiating power where if we can't come to an agreement on the terms, or even maybe if we don't even click how I was hoping we were, I can say, okay, well, thanks for your time.
Yeah, well, I'll find one that clicks with me because I've validated that I believe there's something here. And there's a word in the venture space, conviction. And it's like not traditionally used in like, you know, regular human speak a lot, but conviction in your idea, conviction in your plan, and conviction in your company's ability to hit those goals.
Yeah.
That's 89% of what all investors write checks for.
Yeah.
They're not writing checks because they truly think that the world needs a basketball catching machine. Right. Sometimes they do, but most of the time, no. They think that, oh man, this founder is so convinced, and actually, like his conviction comes from data and comes from fact, not just from he's you know, high in his own supply. This is really like, oh man, if he believes this much, we're in. Let's do this.
You know, I have to say something there as well, Grant, and I think that's something that's a bit overlooked, but I completely agree with conviction. And to raise capital, it truly does take conviction. And what I mean by that is like, in order to feel the conviction, you have to put in the work to make it feel like you have to get there. Right. Unless you're just like completely delusional, which is also like, you know, you can
sometimes useful.
You can be Adam Newman and do WeWork and like just keep it going and never stop. And you know, that's that story for another day. But like the founders that truly go out there and they figure out, they validate it for themselves, walking into those like that's basically what they're after. Yeah. The reason why I think sometimes fundraising gets a bad rap and like talking with like investors and things like that is less because like investors write checks. Yeah. That's their job. That's their job. Like that is what they're doing. They're capital allocators. They raise money from LPs or they have cash, and that's a differentiated asset that is clearly high risk. And the only thing you're looking for is like a true venture backed return. Right. So as long as the math checks out and this guy actually has conviction as is worth the shot, they're going to put in 10 to 50 bets depending on the fund and hope that one of them hits. Yep. So their job is to deploy capital. Your job is to walk in with conviction. Yeah. And you walk out with the check. Yeah. And so make sure you have those three things.
I love that. It actually reminds me of a quote. I actually hear a lot of basketball players say it, so I don't know who to attribute it to. I'm going to attribute to...
Well, it's yourself now if you forgot who it is. We wrote that rule down in this podcast.
Yeah, Eric Roberson, you know, mediocre junior college basketball player. He once said that, you know, I trust my work. Like people, reporters would always ask like, this is the context. I would always hear this quote. Like they'd ask players like, are you nervous? Are you nervous such and such is going to be in the audience, or
you're playing this other team. Yeah.
Yeah. And they say, no, I've been in the gym. Yeah. You know, I trust my work. I've put in, I've validated. I've had over 50 conversations. I've had 500 respondents to my surveys. I've tested. And truthfully, you know, you talk about it from a venture capital perspective and getting funding. For me, it was, I needed that in order to make the leap.
From your job.
From my job, exactly. Yeah. I needed to trust my work. And, you know, like I initially got into entrepreneurship. I was laid off my most recent job. And you get unemployment, that gives you some cushion. But it got to the point where I'm like, man, I'm getting some traction from HOOPTEQ. You know, I got into the pre-accelerator with MHub and having these interviews, and I raised some money. And, you know, I did these different things that kind of came to the point. And shout out to my wife, because truthfully, she was like the biggest supporter. Like, she's like, go for it.
Yeah, she got to gas you up.
Yeah.
Because someone's got to. Like, you can't always be your own cheerleader.
Yeah.
And in every founder relationship, there's either a parent or a significant other or a friend or an uncle, or insert a relation that you have in your community, back to community, that is behind the scenes just gassing that person up. Like, no, man, you got this. Like, no matter what, the chips are down. No, what, you can do this. And it takes that push to have someone else believe in themselves enough to have the conviction.
Exactly. Yeah. And you could do it 2 ways. One, you could be delirious, like you said. And
that's true.
That could get you in trouble, but sometimes it works out.
Yeah.
But then another way is to trust your work, put in the work, and then have people like my beautiful, amazing, pretty wife who says like, honey, I've seen you every day after work working on this, and I've seen you networking, and I've seen you putting in the work. Like, I believe in you, go for it. And, so that I love that conviction. That's spot on.
Conviction and go for it.
Conviction, go for it.
Everybody, this is the Hardtech Podcast with our guests, Eric Roberson and Grant Chapman. I'm DeAndre Hericus. Look forward to you guys tuning in next week.
Take care.
Thank you.